Welcome to Across the Balkans. Great to have you with us on the show. I'm Ludovica Brignola. The National Assembly of Bosnia's Serb entity, Republika Srpska, has passed a controversial draft law on foreign agents despite public outcry. The draft law would require non-profit organizations funded from abroad and active in the entity to register and report on their work. Those organizations would also be banned from political activity. A similar law on foreign agents adopted in Russia is claimed to be used to silence dissent and free exchange of ideas. Civil organizations and rights groups in Republika Srpska criticized the draft law, describing it as a suppression of freedom of expression and basic human rights. EU and US officials have also called it repressive and anti-democratic. Republika Srpska's Justice Minister says the goal is to prevent the misuse of NGOs. The law will be subject to public discussion for 30 days before taking effect. And to further discuss Republika Srpska's draft law on foreign agents, I'm joined by Yahya Muhasilovic. He's a political analyst from Sarajevo. Thank you for joining us today. Right, firstly, can you help us understand what this draft law entails and what is its aim, in essence?
Its aim is basically to put under the control how it is defined by this draft law, to put everything what is coming from outside of entity of Republika Srpska. And they're trying, actually, the authorities in Republika Srpska, led by Milorad Dodik and his party SNSD, they're trying to basically adopt this law since 2013. So for the last decade or so, maybe even longer period, we are witnessing actually some form of rise of autocracy in that entity, and by adopting this law, and it might be it will be adopted in 1 month, we will see the rise of authoritarianism, where they're trying to basically to control the political narrative. So that regime is actually recognizing that the NGOs, especially those who are not founded in that entity but funded from the outside sources from different countries, he's seeing that as a threat for his authoritarian regime. And also this draft law is resembling very much, it is copy-pasted from the laws that were adopted in Russia by Putin's regime. So in a way, he is imitating Putin's regime, and he's trying to create more authoritarianism in that entity. We are witnessing similar problems in Serbia, although in Serbia, there is not that much political hegemony by Alexander Vučić. So definitely we are witnessing something which is the rise of authoritarianism in that entity. But what is interesting is that although it is criticized by the international community here in Bosnia, not much was done by that same international community which is criticizing this draft law. Besides some, verbal threats, nothing concrete was done until now to stop Dodik and the rise of authoritarianism in that entity.
Right, it's really interesting what you say, and hinting at Putin's regime. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But we've seen there's been fierce opposition to this draft law, and not only in the region. Why are civil organizations and rights groups essentially criticizing the law? What are the reasons that they're opposing it?
The reason they are criticizing is basically freedom of speech and freedom of opinion, which has been limited in this specific entity by Milorad Dodik and his regime. And the problem is that actually he is too long in power, and basically the way international community acted in Bosnia and Herzegovina has paved the way for Milorad Dodik to become authoritarian ruler by ignoring what was done by his regime for the last 2 decades and longer. The reason why he's afraid of this draft law is that there is a lot of chronic corruption going on in that entity, and basically the elimination of the political plurality, because he managed through time to basically to put under his own control majority of media which are active in that entity, a majority of NGOs. Don't forget that he's also having NGOs which are loyal to him and his political power. And basically those NGOs that are not controlled by Milorad Dodik and his regime are making hard time for him. So this is probably the last line of defense against authoritarianism that he's going to close. Mm-hmm. So that's a trend that we are following, not only in this entity, but very similar trend we have in Serbia, which was much more successful than in this entity. Russia, Hungary, Poland, and many other Eastern European countries. So this is some form of Eastern European trend going on.
Right. What are the real dangers that Republika Srpska would face if they really were to pass such a law?
The danger is that we will not have any more political plurality, because even the opposition which is existing in that entity is weaker as years are passing. So basically, he is now even controlling the majority of the so-called opposition in that entity, and we are seeing that like similar form of political development which is going on in that entity, which is resembling pretty much authoritarian regime. So he started at one point where there was a real political plurality in that entity, but as time is passing, he's becoming too strong that basically everything now is controlled in that entity. And later on, of course, it will probably lead to a lot of imprisonments. So he's also having one law which is about a verbal delict, basically ordering that everyone should be arrested who is criticizing the regime. So Dodik is like going forward in his authoritarianism, and until he is stopped by either Bosnian authorities, state authorities, or by the international community, he won't stop, because he's having a lot of international support for this. Don't forget that. He's supported by Serbia, by Vucic's regime, he's supported by Orban, he's supported by Putin, and international community is just looking aside what is happening there.
Right, so you say that political plurality is at risk, but also freedom of expression. The EU and the US have also been outspoken against the law, saying it's repressive and it's anti-democratic as well. But officials in the Republika Srpska actually say that the US has a very similar law on foreign agents. Would this be a fair comparison, in your opinion?
Well, I'm not sure United States and international community are serious and honest about Milorad Dodik, because they had to stop him much before he became too strong. Now they still have capacities, don't get me wrong, they still have capacities to remove him from power, or at least to limit his authoritarianism, but we see that actually international community and United States included, they are not doing they are not doing enough to basically stop the trend of authoritarianism in that in that specific entity. And whether we can make or not make comparisons, well, every case, every nation state, every political entity is case for itself. So I'm not sure how much that comparison is relevant, but definitely the closest example of what Milorad Dodik is doing at the moment in that entity is probably Russia's example.
Right, but at the same time, Republika Srpska's justice minister has said the goal of this draft law would be to prevent the misuse of non-profit organizations. What does he mean, in your opinion, by misuse of non-profit organizations? And do you think he has a point?
Well, I don't think he's have a point, because he's loyal to Milorad Dodik's regime. They will always find some form of argument to justify the way things are going, to justify their authoritarianism. And they often use, besides that argument, they are often using argument of conspiracy, that foreign NGOs are working for imperials, for West, to undermine the rule of Milorad Dodik, to undermine the Serbian patriotism. So he's constantly using the narrative and rhetoric that they're going to basically project unpatriotic values, that they're going against the conservative values of the Serbian people, so on and so forth. So they're using different arguments for the different audience. And probably that audience that you just have mentioned is probably for the foreign audience, for them, to justify authoritarianism. So, but what is for sure that this regime is sliding towards the authoritarianism, and what is happening is that the international community, which I repeat is having capacities to stop him, are silent because of the geopolitical interest that they are having here in Bosnia.
Yahya Muhasilovic, real pleasure having you on the show. Much appreciated. Let's look at other stories making headlines in the region this week. The world has reacted after the Palestinian group Hamas launched the biggest attack on Israel in decades. As Israel's aerial bombardment of Gaza continues, some countries have been quick to support Israel, while others have urged a swift return to peace talks. And many Balkan leaders were among those showing solidarity with Israel. Kosovo, Albania, Republika Srpska, Montenegro and North Macedonia's leaders condemned the attacks by Hamas and extended their condolences to the Israeli people. As of October 10th, Turkey has officially taken over the command of the NATO peacekeeping force in Kosovo. The KFOR mission has been operating in the Balkan country for more than 2 decades to maintain security and stability. A total of 27 countries, including 6 non-NATO members, have soldiers in the force. Turkey is the second major contributor to the mission and now assumes the KFOR command and leadership from Italy. The handover comes after recent deadly clashes in northern Kosovo that further raised tensions between Pristina and Belgrade. And the European Parliament has approved a resolution to launch Moldova's EU membership talks by the end of the year. The resolution says the Moldovan government has showed determination and ability to fulfill the EU Commission's requirements to begin accession talks. The Parliament also underlined the importance of Moldova's membership, saying it would represent a geostrategic investment in a united and strong Europe. Moldova is one of Europe's least developed countries and gained candidate status in June 2022 following Russia's attack on Ukraine.